Everybody, welcome. We're doing managerial accounting, some relevant costs for decision making, and we're right now doing some segment elimination. My disclaimer and copyright notice: the information and opinions in this presentation are those of myself and not my employers or affiliated organizations, including but not limited to Irvine Valley College and the South Orange County Community College District. This presentation is for educational purposes only and does not constitute any legal or accounting advice whatsoever. This presentation is copyright 2008 to 2024 by Bennett Tchaikovsky. All rights are reserved. Any distribution is strictly prohibited. Presentations from time to time will use information from third parties. The third-party information is the property of those respective copyright holders, and I do not make any claim to that third-party information. So before I say goodbye and thank you for watching, let's go ahead and take a look at our question here now. So Permute Inc. has 4 departments. By the way, I'm an equal opportunity offender. This is our former president, probably is going to be our next president, Mr. Donald Trump. We'll see what happens. But you know, it'll be entertaining going through November. I don't really have a horse in the fight, that, you know, it's a donkey or an elephant. So coming over here, we have 4 departments, Leeds. Actually, we have 5 departments. Sorry. I have 5 departments: Leeds, McDougal, Daniels, Stonoff, and Maples. PI wants to maximize profit. Prepare an income statement assuming that any department can be eliminated. So when we're looking at segment elimination, the way we want to kind of go through and look at this is we're trying to maximize our profit, right? So that is what our goal is. So when we go through and look at this, if we were to go through and say, well, we're going to run this a couple of different ways. Let's first go through and assume. And what we're going to do first is we are going to eliminate any department that has a net loss. Now, before we go through and talk about segment elimination, I want you to think about a couple of different things. One of the things in California, and this is April of 2024, there was a new minimum wage law that was enacted. And certain restaurant chains like Mod Pizza decided to go through and basically close up shop at a lot of different locations. When you're going through and you are deciding to eliminate a segment, it is extremely complicated, especially in a state like California. There are a lot of federal laws that concern shutting down. There's something called the WARN Act, okay, which is the Worker Adjustment and Retraining. This is basically enacted over here that if you're going over here requiring most employers with 100 or more employees to provide a notification 60 calendar days prior to the layoff. So when you do a segment elimination, you have to make sure you're doing it legally and in the correct way. It's not something you're going to basically do lightly. But for this problem, it basically tells us over here that we can assume that any department can be eliminated. Now, if I decide to go through and eliminate, right? So right now I'm running at a $9,000 net loss. If I decide to go through and eliminate departments that have net losses, I would be eliminating Department McDougal, Department Daniels, and I would also be eliminating Department Maples. And so what happens when I go through and I decide to eliminate these departments? Well, let's see the ones we're keeping. So with Department Leads, right, we're making a profit of about $26,000. So that's not going to really change. And I'm also going to keep Department Stonoff. So over here, so that has a profit of $35,000. If I decide to eliminate Department McDougal, the revenue is going to go to 0. The avoidable expenses, meaning that I can avoid it if I shut it down, are also going to go to zero. However, I can never avoid unavoidable expenses. So right over here, my total expenses are 15,000, and now my loss is at 15. For Department Daniel, same thing. Revenue goes to zero. Avoidable expenses goes to zero. My unavoidable expenses, however, I cannot get rid of those. So over here, my net loss is now at 30,000. Let's take a look at Department Maples. My revenue is going to go to zero. My avoidable expenses will go to zero because I'm able to avoid those costs if I close the business. But my unavoidable expenses, I cannot get rid of. So over here, I now have a loss of 135,000. So when we're going through and looking at this situation where we've decided to go through and to eliminate anything over here, any business that basically is generating a net loss, what's happened to me? Well, I've gone from $9,000 loss to $119,000 loss. What happened? Well, if we look at this over here, and this is the trick for these problems, is that what we want to go through and do to maximize profit is we want to see the situation where if the avoidable expenses are greater than the revenue, then we would target that segment for elimination. So if we now say we will eliminate any department where avoidable expenses are greater than revenue, what's going to happen? So if we change this up where the avoidable expenses are greater than revenue, what happens? Well, the two departments we would be getting rid of would be McDougal and Daniels. So these would be the two segments we would eliminate. And when I look at Department Maples, I'm not going to get rid of Department Maples. Why? The avoidable expenses are less than revenue. Therefore, it's able to contribute to covering the cost of my avoidable expenses. So over here, if I eliminate any department where avoidable expenses are greater than a revenue, right, I'm only eliminating these two. So let's go ahead and take a look at what happens. So this part over here for Department Leeds, I'm keeping this particular department, right? This is not going through and changing, right? I'm keeping Department Stonoff over here. Okay, I'm going to keep Department Maples, right? Why am I keeping it? It is because the avoidable expenses, even though it has a loss, the avoidable expenses are less than the revenue, so it can contribute to covering my unavoidable expenses. So if I go through and eliminate Department McDougal and Department Daniels, right, over here, so now I have this loss over here of 15,000 and 30,000. Remember, we are trying to go through and to maximize my profit, right? I'm going through and trying to maximize the profit. So over here, my revenues are going to be 800,000. My avoidable expenses are 479. My unavoidable expenses remain at 310, right? That number doesn't change. So now I have net income of 11,000. So the trick is when you get these questions, right? The way you want to look at it is that if I have a situation where I am trying to maximize profit, I will eliminate the segments where the avoidable expenses are greater than the revenue. And that will help me maximize profit. Just a few other things to share with you. When we are going and presenting something to a board member or to a company, and we go, say, if we were working at Amazon before the implementation of Amazon Web Services, and we said to Jeff Bezos, we said to him, hey, Jeff, this Amazon Web Services, we're going to be losing money for years. Okay. He would probably go and you say that, oh, you shouldn't do this business. Well, you probably would get fired. But the thing to remember is that it may be okay for a business to lose money intentionally. And let's just take a look over here at our friends at Rivian. So if I'm coming over here to Rivian Automotive, and I look at their annual report, and I come over here to their annual numbers of their financial statements. Let's take a look at their income statements real quick. Boy, oh boy, oh boy. Look what's happening over here. They have no gross profit. They are losing money on every vehicle they're going through and selling. What's interesting is if we were to go back and say, take a look at our friends at Tesla. And I have honestly, if I come over here, we'll turn this toolkit on. And let's take a look at all their 10Ks and 10Qs. We'll go back over here. I'll just randomly pick this one over here. Go ahead and go to financial statements. I might need to go back a little bit earlier, but this is actually not the right one to go through and look at. But if I were to go back earlier in time, okay. Well, I may be wrong on this one. So, but not a good example, but I'm sure that if we were to look at the very early days of Tesla, similar to Rivian, we would be going through and seeing that there's a company that is intentionally going through, and sorry, Mr. Musk, I didn't mean to make that error. But we would be going through, and you may have situations where you're intentionally losing money. Now, this may be to get into the marketplace. We may have known that we were going to be losing money initially, and that may be okay as long as we have enough cash to go through and do it. So again, when you're looking at these questions to segment elimination, now if you're taking my class, I'm basically going to give you this question and say, well, prepare an income statement to maximize profit. And so what you would do is say, well, I'm going to go ahead and where any department where the avoidable expenses are greater than the revenue, I get rid of it. But just for your own knowledge, is that we may be in a situation where we may be losing money for a long time, and that may be okay. It just depends on the business plan. If it's something for like Rivian, where they know they're going to be losing money for the next few years as they're building their market share and they're trying to get their prices down, that may be okay for Rivian, right? Will they survive? I have no idea, right? But what we do know is the importance of showing the information to management. We want to show that information also too. If we eliminate a segment, we also need to make sure that we've done our due diligence and we know the HR, basically the implications of going through and doing that. So thank you for being here with me today. I look forward to seeing you on future videos. If you have any comments, please feel free to leave them below. Thank you for liking and subscribing, and I look forward to seeing you on future videos. Have a great day.